Every country eventually faces the same question. Is national strength measured by the wars you can win or by the future you're able to build? At the start of this series, I asked a very different question though. If a country spends over $2 billion every single day on its military, what else could that money build? And after looking at history, economic competition, and global investment, we arrive at the biggest question of all. What actually makes a nation strong? In part one, we talked about opportunity cost. The idea that every dollar a government spends in one place is a dollar not spent somewhere else. In part two, we broke down the myth that a country can stay on top forever. That economic leadership isn't permanent. It's something nations have to keep investing in. And in part three, we looked at what happens when countries actually make those investments. South Korea, for example, a country that went from widespread poverty in the 1960s to one of the most technologically advanced economies in the world today. Because they invested heavily in education, engineering, and industrial innovation. And that brings us back to the original question. Is national strength measured by the wars you can win or by the future you're able to build? History actually gives us a powerful answer to that question. For decades, the Soviet Union had one of the most powerful militaries in the world. They had huge ground forces, a massive nuclear arsenal, and advanced space capabilities. In fact, the Soviet military was considered comparable to or even larger than the US military at the time. But while enormous resources went into defense, the broader Soviet economy struggled to keep up with Western innovation and productivity. Because at the same time, the United States and its allies were investing heavily in universities, scientific research, private industry, and technology development. And over time, those investments compounded. By the late 1980s, the economic gap between the Soviet system and Western economies had grown so large that the Soviet Union simply couldn't sustain the competition and collapsed in 1991. Because national strength isn't just about armies or factories. It's about knowledge, research, and innovation. In fact, countries around the world now collectively spend over $2 trillion every year on research and development. $2 trillion invested in science, medicine, technology, and engineering. And collectively, these nations do that because they know that the countries that lead in those fields often shape the global economy for decades. New technologies, new industries, new medical breakthroughs, those things don't happen by accident. They happen when countries invest consistently in people, education, and research. And that brings us to something important closer to home. Because sometimes people hear discussions like this and say, well, look at Canada. We don't have the manufacturing power we once had. And that's partly true. Many traditional factory jobs have moved elsewhere in the global economy. But national strength doesn't have to come from manufacturing alone. It can come from innovation, from technology development, from natural resources managed strategically, from a highly educated workforce, and from building strong international partnerships. In an interconnected world, economic resilience often comes from diversification, from not relying too heavily on a single trading partner, from building networks of cooperation, trade, and shared innovation. Because the strongest countries in the next century probably won't just be the ones with the biggest armies. They'll be the ones investing the most in their people, in their universities, in their scientists and engineers, in their ability to adapt, innovate, and collaborate with the world. History has shown us something interesting. Military power might shape the present, but education, innovation, and human potential are what shape the future. And the nations that understand that first are usually the ones that end up leading the next century. So the relevant question for every country is simple. What kind of future are we choosing to invest in today? In my next video, I'm going to talk about the true costs of not investing in healthcare and education. Peace out. And if you're not already following me, you should. It's going to be a ride.